morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on what side of the pond you're on. And welcome to a special, what we're going to call this, breaking debate, fiery debate. My name is Phil Kennedy, and I'm here with my co-host, Tony Robinson, from the Great White North of Canada. And today we're going to talk about, first, some rule changes or emphases that have been introduced to the EFL this year. And then we're going to end with, of course, Accrington Stanley, a little bit of a review of the opening matches, a look ahead to Saturday's match. First and foremost, how are you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing well, Phil, and it's not the Great White North just yet because we haven't got snow yet. We're still a few months away from that, but I certainly get.
I think it turned from July to August. The snow started.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we do get that nickname, the Great White North, because I think a lot of people think we get snow more than we actually do. But I mean, where I am, we're further south than a lot of the, some of the northern states and some of the big cities in Minnesota, places like that. So.
I read a stat the other day that kind of threw me. Now, I already knew different things like that. I think over half of Canada's population lives within 50 miles of the U.S. border. I also know that Toronto and Montreal, the two most populous cities in Canada, are actually geographically south of Seattle.
Yeah.
Well,
you know what? With that information, Phil, you could be an honorary Canadian, because I think there's a lot of Canadians don't know that fact, and certainly a lot of Americans don't either. But
well, here was the new one, though, but this was the new one. Those were the ones I already knew. This is the one that really blew my mind, though, is that there is actually a greater population of U.S. citizens that live north of the population of Canadian citizens, if that kind of makes sense. So basically, the population in the U.S. North of Canada is greater than the entire population of Canada.
Further north than the southern part, because I mean, in southern Ontario, we're further south.
Yeah, I'm wording this wrong, and
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Next episode, I'll get the facts together, but it kind of blew my mind. And I mean, that's like, did you know that Reno, Nevada, is actually geographically west of Los Angeles?
Well, I did not know that, and you know what? I think this education is giving me a brain freeze. I think we should get back to talking football. I think it was enough. We're not a geography podcast, so
we can give people more bang for their buck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think football is where we want to go with this. So Tony, the first Accrington match, I think that everybody noticed that there was over 10 minutes of stoppage time in both halves, and I think that kind of is what led us to want to talk about this.
Yeah, and it became sort of. It started off with, obviously, in the World Cup, when we saw a lot of added time in almost every match, and it sort of really didn't get mentioned, or I didn't see much on it. And then opening weekend, when you see the extra time, and then on the commentary they're explaining about the new rules and the management of the games now, how it's changing, and everybody really that you talk to that watched their own team or a match had similar stories about 8 to 10 minutes added in each half. And so I thought, we just sort of talk back and forth as to, the pros and cons of this, and have they gone too far, and what's it all about? So that's why I thought we'd have a discussion.
Well, one thing that you mentioned the World Cup, and I think this is also a situation with the Premier League, is one thing I've noticed is that in leagues where VAR became a thing, the stoppage time ended up being longer because of VAR. And I think that was a lot of the situation with the World Cup. But now we're talking about League Two, where you don't have VAR, and this is more due to actual rule changes, like you had mentioned. Now, I think one thing that we probably want to clarify, and you're actually probably more clear on this than I am, I'm actually just going to use a quick analogy from American football real quick here, because I know that with American football, they have something called the Competition Committee. The NFL, or the American Football Competition Committee, kind of reviews the league rules every year. And they do two things. They make rule changes, and then they make points of emphasis. And what a point of emphasis is basically something that's already an existing rule, but they're telling the referees, look at this more carefully. And for what I'm understanding, this is more of a point of emphasis situation than a rule actually being rewritten. Is that correct?
I think there's some validity to that, Phil, but I don't think that covers the whole picture. I started looking into this, and basically, there's four changes, or four areas for discussion, and the four categories, and then I'll list the categories, and then we can sort of touch on each one separately. They want more accurate stoppage time. There's more leniency now on physical tackles. The next topic they tackled was less tolerance. Oh, sorry, I'm going to have to edit that one. Less tolerance on dissent. And the last one, which is a very interesting one that that it's still very confusing, is only one person in the technical area and the rules that come with it. So if we just,
Tony, my question for you then would be, of those four areas, which ones would you consider points of emphasis, and which ones were actually rewritten in the rule book?
I think you could to some degree apply it to all of them, because there's rules on the books, and I think they are like you said, emphasizing these rules more. But there's some new rules brought in, especially in the last one about the technical area, which we'll cover in a minute. But one thing I think before we sort of go further is it's very interesting. I found very interesting is that they measured the actual time in play, and in the league. In the Premier League, I should say.
I heard that. That was very interesting. So
yeah.
To go on, that's actually one of the main things I wanted to talk about. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it's actually 55 minutes in time and play in the Premier League. The Championship is 52. League One is 50, and League Two is 48. Now, you could say some of that is due to the quality of the players in each league. They're, with the ball kept in play more on the ground, whereas, in the lower leagues, when it comes to defending, there's times where the ball is just kicked out, to play safe, and as well as, and that would account for some of it.
I was surprised that League Two is actually more time in play than League One by about 2 minutes.
Well, no, the League Two is only 48 minutes in play, and League One is 50.
I thought it was the opposite. I thought League One was 48 and League Two was 50. That was at least what I wrote down from TalkSport.
Okay, well, that's the information I got, and maybe it's possible I wrote it down wrong. Bottom line is they're within 2 minutes of each other, so they're both in the same sort of area. Yeah. And I think there's ways to look at this. Is they want to start doing I guess the referee is supposedly doing a stopwatch on when the ball goes out of play.
How did they not already have that?
Well, this is the thing. I'm wondering if before it was more of a not really sort of a detailed accounting of the time that was.
It was an abacus. It was an abacus.
Yeah. It was like throw up a coin. Is it 3 minutes or 4 minutes at the end of the half? But some of the time wasting they want to address.
It's funny. When I watch the games with my mom, we play a game where we try to guess how many minutes they're adding on, and I almost imagine the officials doing the same thing.
Well, I think it's hard not to think that way, because sometimes you look at, especially this season, is where did they come up with that amount of time? Some of the things that they're looking at is adding extra time on is for goal celebrations, and that you can't a goal celebration.
I assume that they already were for that. I mean,
well, they do. They were add like 30 seconds on, but I mean, if they feel it's excessive. And I mean, a goal celebration, you can't take that out of the game, obviously. But if they're stopping the watch,
or something.
Yeah, if they're stopping the clock as soon as the goal goes in, and then it takes 45 seconds to get kickoff again, and they're adding that on, I mean, you don't want to discourage a team from celebrating, but then again, you don't want them going into the crowd or doing anything like that. But if it's within reason, then I think stopping the clock for some of the goal celebrations is a bit too much. Now, goal kicks, I can understand. When you can tell when a goalkeeper is really going to waste time, because they'll put the ball down, move it to the other side of the box, and things like that. But I mean, to address that, if you warn them and give them a yellow card, and that will stop that. But I think set pieces. Another one is set pieces. You take time to set it up.
But before we get too into the individuals, and this is something I wanted to present to you, Tony. Back in the 1960s, in the sport of basketball, not so much time wasting, but just holding the ball became a problem where, less talented teams would just basically kind of try to play keep away with the ball. And that's why the NBA and college basketball eventually instituted the shot clock, where, for instance, in the NBA, a team has 24 seconds to attempt a shot. Otherwise, they turn the ball over. What would your thought be on some kind of like a 30-second shot clock on some situations, like you said, corner kicks, set piece kicks, things like that? Like, once the referee places the ball, 30 seconds starts counting, and they have to kick it within that amount of time.
No, I to be honest, Phil, I don't like that at all. I don't think you can start putting in some American and North American type rules into the game. I mean, there are 45-minute halves, and then the referee is in charge of the extra time, and this is where the injury time that they're adding on, which is where they're trying to get a handle on. But I don't see. I think if it's a normal 30 seconds to take a corner or set piece, and they go longer than that, you add the extra time taken to the half. But I don't.
A quick question, just kind of slightly off topic, but in relation to this, because I think it's a good comparison. This season, Major League Baseball instituted a pitch clock that limits the amount of time that the pitcher can take between pitches. Initially, I did not like it. I did not think it was a good idea. That being said, it has proven very popular and, really seemed to improve the pace of the game. I know you watch baseball. Is the pitch clock something that you've enjoyed?
I think it was necessary to move the game along and get some of these, the individuals that are slow at the bat type thing, and some of the pitchers that do delay tactics and things of that nature. But Yeah, I think, but again, there's no set clock like in the NFL or the NBA, and I don't see, you get the halves are 45 minutes, and then
Right.
the different time the difference in the extra time is what the ref adds on. I don't think you can go to anything like in the NFL where they have to get a playoff in so many seconds and that nature. It's a different type of sport where you can put that in. And now in rugby in England, they have
I'm specifically looking at set pieces and in stoppage situations. I mean, certainly nothing in the run of regular play. I'm just wondering, kind of going back to the baseball situation, is it just something that's necessary to speed up the play and kind of deter some of the players that are doing the time wasting tactic?
No, I think you go too far with that. I think the intent, what they're trying to pull off, is good, but I think the application of it has just gone a bit too far, and that leads us on to the next one, which does make sense and is really a sort of
before we get on to the next one, there was one last, and this actually kind of will lead well into the next topic as well. There was one last point that they made on the Talk Sport fiery debate that I wanted to ask you about. And one of those was, I don't remember which of the three gentlemen it was, but he was making the point that it had already long and difficult season where players are playing sometimes multiple games per week. Injuries are already prevalent. Is adding this much extra time, I mean, you figure adding back in the past, 5 minutes was maybe an average. So, you're adding an extra maybe 10 minutes onto every game. Does this become a safety issue at any point?
I don't know. Yeah, well, like it can if lead to. I guess in some instances, if somebody gets injured in that extended period, that they'll blame it on the extra time. But as far as match fitness, I think one of the things that you see now, and we've seen this in the games with John Coleman, is that he's making his substitutes early, which he's utilizing his bench, he's saving his players, plus it's having good effects on the pitch. So, I mean, if you're extending the game the way it has been, I see it as a benefit. It's making coaches make moves that they were hesitant or wouldn't do in the past. And I think you're still going to see, and we talked about this, where you see Sean Wally and Sean McConville, being subbed like they have been. And we talked about that in our other shows. And I think it's going to, they're still going to get 50 to 55 minutes playing time, and it's going to extend their career with the subs. And I think it's going to utilize the bench more and get more players into the game and gain them more experience. So, in a sense, I see the positives or the benefit, the ones, people that can benefit from it. But I think just jumping in and going from 4 or 5 minutes to 8, 9, or 10 minutes, it's just been a bit too much. But it has had an effect on how managers coach the game.
Yeah, and I think the additional subs that we have now is probably something that kind of offsets that as well. Yeah. So let's go into the, as long as we're talking about injuries and safety, let's go into your next talking point, Tony.
Yeah, the one thing, and we've noticed this in the last matches, especially the one I noticed it in when they played Newport. There's more leniency on physical play, and we've seen players get pushed or touched when they're touched on the back and they go down and they award the free kick. And so I'm probably not the only one who was yelling about that being a foul. But they're instructed now to be more lenient on those type of fouls, which let's face it, there's a lot of players, and Sean Wall is as good as you get. That when he got touched, he'd go down. And who was the Zanzala back a couple, 2 or 3 seasons ago? My goodness, you'll touch him with the feather and he'd go down. And I think that when you look at that, it led to a lot of stoppages in play. So if you let the physical tackles that aren't reckless or endangering a player, if you let them slide, the ball's in play more. And if the ball's in play more, then there's a better flow to it. So I think
on top of that, physical play is exciting.
Yeah, but when you do a shoulder to shoulder, or you touch somebody in the back and they go down, and I think you're gonna wave those on, and that's right. So
nobody likes that. Nobody likes the dives and the flopping and that. I think that when I first started watching football, the first football that I really sat down and watched matches and really started following the game was in 2006 in the 2006 World Cup. And the one guy, and I'm not going to make a lot of fans in England are saying this, but the one guy that really caught my attention and won me over in that tournament was Zinedine Zidane. And for the exact reason that he did not just go down. You really actually had to hit him to get him off his feet. And I've always respected players who wouldn't just go down, who would make guys earn the card against them.
Well, I think, you can't blame the players, because if the referee is going to call them, the players will do it. So, if a ref sees somebody pushed in the back, touched in the back, and they go down and award a free kick, that player is going to continually do that. So I have no problem with them getting rid of that.
Well, I'm not faulting guys.
No, I'm just saying.
I'm just saying I have extra respect for guys that don't.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we may be an issue, and it might be more prevalent in the lower leagues, is the consistency between the referees making these decisions. Because when you looked at that match against Newport, you didn't really know or comment on the referee as far as having an impact on the game. I can't even remember his name, other than the biggest impact was the amount of time that they added on in the halves. But as far as the officiating, once you realize that they're told to let these contact fouls, let them slide, then you can understand where they're coming from. As I say, I just think it's going to be there's got to be consistency with these referees, especially in the lower leagues, or the players are just going to get really confused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something else they were talking about on the Talk Sport, is that the competency of the referees. Yeah, they certainly called that into question.
Well, and this leads us into the next topic, which was the new rules on dissent. And I think there's some
one that's in writing more than the others, right?
Well, the like on the threshold, they say the threshold will be lowered by the referees, so that in a sense, then they won't tolerate as much. And I guess in the rule now is if more than one player approaches the referee, then the other players will get an automatic yellow card, and especially if somebody runs from a few yards away in protest towards the referee, not contact him, but makes that run towards him, they'll get a yellow card. I think that is a good rule, because in the past you've seen every time a player goes down, when the other team, they will surround the referee and do the signal for a card.
Good old LeBron James.
I think there should always it should have been just before the match, the referee says to the teams, and I know this is the way I remember it, is it was the captain could only, you go to speak to the referee, but one player can address a referee. But I mean, if there's any indication of dissent, then, and I think we've seen it to some degree so far. You haven't seen the crowding the referee, so I think the players know that this will be enforced, and you certainly don't want to get a yellow card for being the second guy talking to an official. And another one, I think,
this is something else that was going to help with the flow of the game and less time wasted with joint refs.
Yeah, didn't we see it in the Charity Shield? I think that the Arsenal manager got a yellow card, I believe, for gesturing.
Yeah, Arteta.
Arteta for gesturing that somebody should have got a yellow. So by doing that, they're going to stamp down, and I have no problem with that. And another one is, and we've seen it in. I think we saw it in the Newport game. Is if a player it kicks the ball away. Or maybe it was another match, but I've seen it where a player has been given a yellow card for just pushing the ball back, where in the past the referee wouldn't have pulled out the card. So I think again it's got to be consistency of enforcing these rules, because I think you're going to see initially an increase in cards, but I think once players realize that these cards are going to be given out, and if they're going to be suspended after a certain number of yellow cards, I think you're going to see these players start to follow the rules, and I think you'll see the flow of the game improve, and that, I think the intent is there. It's just I think you've just got to be consistent in enforcing the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the consistency in enforcing the rules is the key. I think that's what everybody wants to see. If the ref is, for instance, letting some things go, as long as they're letting it go on both sides, they're okay with that. If he's calling things close, as long as he's calling it, close both ways, they're going to be okay with that. And then also consistency from official to official. You don't want to have to necessarily play differently based on who's calling the match.
Yeah, and I think that leads us into the next, the last one, and I think this is to do with, the fourth official, or they're calling, or is he called now the assistant referee? I'm not sure exactly the official title, but it was the fourth official, but I think now they're giving them more
AR.
Yeah, they're giving them more authority, and you know what? To be honest, I mean they. You look at the fourth official or assistant referee in between the two technical areas, and if he's not getting it from one manager or coach, he's getting it from the other. So that's going to be sort of stamped out, and some of the rules in this area are a bit confusing, and it's going to be interesting to see them. And I don't think, unfortunately, on iFollow that we'll get to see them. See how it plays out, but I certainly will when I'm at the matches. But there's only one coach allowed in the technical area, and they can't have a conversation. An assistant coach, or say it's like John Coleman is in the technical area.
Will want to be that one.
Well, he sits on the fence or on the cooler, and he's never really in the technical area. So I don't know how that's going to stand with the rules, because if you allow one player in the technical area and the others have to be in the bench or the seats, and you. I
wonder, do you think the rule is that you have to be in the area to address the ref, and that only one person can be in at a time?
Well, you can only have one person in that box, but.
What I'm saying is, do you think that the rule is if they're not in the box, they can't talk to the ref?
I'm not sure if I'm not sure if that's the intent, but it may come out as that way, because they're if they leave that box,
if that's a workaround. If he can stand 2 feet outside and talk to and have another guy in, but I'm imagining that it's like whoever is in the box can talk to the ref. He's the only one that can be in there. And it basically limits one guy from talking to the AR at a time, I'm assuming.
Well, and that does make sense. It's just that when if you have, say, Jimmy Bell in the technical area, then John Coleman has to be by the seats, or vice versa. And they can't, in the past, where if one of them was in the box and, say, John was in there and Jimmy would walk over and pass on some instructions or some comments, you can't do that now. He's the one player in the box, or the coach in the box has to stay in the box, and the other person, the other coach or manager, has to be by the seats and shouting to the person in the box.
That's to avoid any like old school slapstick comedy where you have one coach and the other guy's right behind the box.
Yeah, and I think it's to stop people wandering down the line and going into area where they shouldn't be. But it's and if you want to like, this is the thing, is that if somebody violates those rules, if somebody goes in, there's two people in that box, or say Jimmy Bell walks in by mistake to talk to John Coleman, he can be shown a straight red card. And when he's ejected, he can't go in the stands. He's got to go to a place out of sight of the pitch. So he'd have to go into the dressing rooms, or wherever. He can't just go and sit in the stands, and they can't sort of relay information by phone, that kind of thing. So it's I think what they're trying to do is obviously protect the fourth official more. Because that's, nobody wanted that job, so now he's got more authority.
He's only getting a pint and a pie the game for pay anyway. So.
Well, yeah, I don't know what they. I mean, they're probably on the same salary as the other, if because they're all. They rotate through, don't they? It's like a baseball crew. An umpiring crew, they rotate through their positions. I think it's going to be interesting, and as I said, unfortunately, on iFollow, we're not going to be able to see a lot of that, how that runs out. But I think we'll know if any of the coaching staff is not adhering to the rules, because we'll certainly know about them getting a card from Dan Jones.
Sent to Coley's early.
Yeah. So it's I think there's a lot of
Coley's having a pint, and then Jimmy Bell will get in line to order one behind you. Yeah, I walked in that box again.
Yeah, and just before I forget, and I haven't got all the names of the individuals in front of me, but the competition we had about predicting the lineup for the opening match, and we had 3 winners, and and I didn't say anything.
Congratulations!
Yeah, and so I agreed to buy each one of them a pint. So we're going to, at the Mansfield match, and now we'll announce the names later. We're going to meet up and buy these 3 individuals a pint of their choice. So as I say, just be
great stuff, more, Tony.
Yeah, just make sure you're in a good mood when you sign my expense account.
I'll tell you, Tony, I think that, in like 3 or 4 more months, we might finally get a first $100 check for Google. It's only taken like 5 years to get there, but we may get our first $100 check from Google soon.
There you go. It's nowhere but up from here. But anyway, it's interesting. It's interesting, some of the stuff they're bringing in, and I think we're just going to have to get used to it. It's going to allow for more players to see action, and it's going to make the coaches be better game management people. And so far in the matches we've seen, Newport and then the Bradford match, both have had positive impacts when he's made the changes. Knowing the fact that there's
that's a great segue, actually, because I think we're about finished with the rules.
Yep. Yes, we'll beat that to death.
Yeah, let's get into the match reviews. And so you mentioned Newport first. I'll let you take it away with your thoughts on that match, and then I'll come in after.
Well, I think the first 20 minutes were a bit slow, and in the past in League One we would have been punished and be down a goal or so after the first 20 minutes. And I think in this division, you can get away with making some mistakes that don't really end up in the back of the net. And I thought as the game got on, we got better, and especially when the subs were made, I thought they made a really good impact. I thought, well, the first goal I thought was a really nice play with Tommy Lee to Jack Nolan, and Jack Nolan is really making a strong case to be a consistent starter in this division. And if Tommy Lee stays, I think I think there's going to be some good play between the two of them, and also with Josh Andrews. Very impressed with him. I think he's going to lead the line really well, and I think you could see him maybe on his own with the other players tucked in behind him a little bit. But I thought the game, as it got stronger as the game went on, and there was some good performances, and when they got the second goal and then the third one put it away. I mean, in the past, we may not have seen the team go for the throat and get those extra goals, but I think they were full value for the victory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to actually kind of make my thought on this fairly short, because I think that it's a fairly to the point thing. Newport County, to me, they're a team. They've been in League Two since 2013 now. This is their 10th year in League Two. They've been fairly consistent mid-table just about every year. Obviously, some years better than others. Last year, they were 15th, which was, lower mid-table. Certainly not where you want to be, but definitely not at the bottom. To me, I feel like Newport County very likely is a standard mid-table League Two lineup that you're going to run into most weeks. If that's the case, I think it's going to be a good season for Stanley. Now, when I say a good season, I'm not going to say we're going to win the league. Not even going to say we're going to make the playoffs or be in the top six. I think that we can win more games than we lose this year, though.
Oh, I totally agree, and one of the things I didn't mention about the first match was the unfortunate injury to Shipley, the left back.
Yeah, I mean, that's 8 weeks.
8 weeks. He's gone back to Norwich for treatment and that. So that's Meller was. They hope to see him for the weekend, hopefully, and Bagley will be back. So I think you'll see Quirk probably drop in, because when he came on in both matches or played in both matches, he certainly impressed. And
I liked what I saw of him last year.
Yeah, we didn't really talk much about him in our preseason preview, because he sort of didn't get a lot of game time. But I think he's a player that really, given the opportunity, could really shine. So, so we'll see how that pans out. And the midfield, again, Seamus was rested, and Sean McConville. I think we'll see those both start on the weekend. And with Tommy Lee, and I think the use of the subs again is going to be important, because we're playing a team in Gillingham that let's face it.
Gillingham. So just to give a little backstory, so they came down to League Two the year before last season was their first season in League Two. They got relegated from League One in 21-22. Last season they finished 17th in League Two, actually 2 spots behind Newport. Obviously, it's an away game, so it's going to be tougher, but Tony, I like our chances. How about you?
Well, if you listen to the Gillingham fans, and they're very high on their team this year, because there's been American investors.
Yeah, give yourself a quick plug.
Oh, well, no, I mean, I was asked to go on one of their shows there to sort of give a background on Stanley. And I think the predictions that I read in the comments were, anywhere from 3-1 to 5-1 win for themselves, because I think because of the new ownership and the investment, they're thinking that they're one of the promotion teams, not challenging, but one of the top teams, and they had us pegged at around the 19. So I think there's a big expectation from their fan base that this is going to be Stanley coming in, reduced players, lost some of their good players from last year, and therefore it's going to be easy 3 points. I'm
Tom Nichols was their big scorer last year, 6 goals, 10 assists. What did they have to say about him?
I didn't really get into their players because, to be honest with you, I haven't seen them play much, and I don't know their squad detailed enough to sort of make comments on that. Other than what I was told is that they've got more depth for every position this year than they have in the past, and their expectations are high. But I said when we go to a team away, we're not going to go park the bus and try and score on the counter. We're going to play football out the back and try and be competitive and pin them in their own half. So I to be honest with you, Phil, I'd take a 1-1 draw now because it is going to be a tough match, but I think it's going to be a really good test to see where the squad is at. And as I say, it depends on if some of the players that had knocks or sat out can come back in for Saturday and utilizes his subs again. If we can have performances like we have in the last 2 matches, I don't see any reason why we can't come out with a point.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tall order because this by no means is the same team that finished 17th last year. Hey, like you said, they've added a lot of depth in a lot of different positions. Like you said, they have new ownership in. To me, I think, obviously they beat Stockport 1-0 at Stockport to open the League 2 season. But what really speaks to me that this is going to be a tough match is that in their EFL Cup match on Tuesday, they beat Southampton, a championship side, 3-1.
Yeah, and I know, and there was only 5 regulars in the Southampton team. So they're
still that's a championship side.
But I think sometimes you can, I wondered that too. Is it's a big win against Stockport because they're another team that's supposed to contend, and those 2 matches. I just hope that hopefully the players go into this match on Saturday with a little bit of overconfidence, and if we can get the first goal, you just never know, because if a team is overconfident and they get scored on, maybe they'll make more mistakes. So I think it's the first 20 minutes. If we can contain them and perhaps even get a goal, I think it changes the complex of the match altogether.
I think this is the classic match that Stanley comes into and surprises some people because, like you said, I mean, Gillingham might be reading their own clippings a bit at this point, coming off the big win against Southampton, thinking they're kind of on top of the world, thinking they're going to roll into a home game against little old Accrington Stanley, and they're going to lose 2-1.
Okay. I hope you're right, Phil. I really do. Again, I'm trying to be sort of cautious a little bit, but again, I think it's gonna show how the team is in relationship to the League Two, and see how well the team is doing.
This is a good barometer game early on, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a real test, and I'm looking forward to watching it because we're away from the WAM. We're playing with confidence and we're playing good football. And if the people that have slight knocks can play, and we can put out similar lineups that we had against Newport, then we're in with a shout.
Well, Tony, I think we have covered quite a bit of ground today. I really enjoyed the rule changes. I really enjoyed watching that first match against Newport, and just all of the excitement. I think when you see John Coleman in his interviews this year, he looks a bit like a new man. Hopefully, all of the positive keeps going. And did you have anything else, Tony, before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered a lot today, Phil. It was just nice again to get together, and I'm looking forward to this the real test and see where we're at. I think it's an important game, and I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Tony. Well, on 3, 1, 2, 3. On Stanley, on. Cheers.
Cheers, Phil.
Have a great one, Tony.